Good afternoon, everyone. We are here for the town hall today. It is my last as president of CEASD. I've been in this position for the last 4 years. The next town hall meeting will happen sometime in June, and that will be run by your next CEASD president, Jeff Braven. And it looks like I've got some drag on my video quality with the background in place, so I'm going to remove that. Oh, this is much better. Today, I'll be sharing the agenda. First off, we'll talk about the executive director position, then the Alice Cogswell and Macy Act, the Educational and Advocacy Summit, the current strategic plan and updates from that, as well as the new strategic plan moving forward over the next 3 years, and the CEASD 2022 conference happening in Salt Lake City this spring. This agenda, please feel free to jump in with questions at any time. This overall town hall is informal. If you have a question, just turn your video on and I'll be glad to respond to those questions. I know some of you may not have attended a town hall before, so you may not be aware also that our executive director, Barbara Raimondo, recently announced that she is headed off to change her journey and to travel, which is difficult for us. So we have really enjoyed her leadership and her support of all deaf children in the country and supporting all of your schools. So it is hitting us hard. There's no one like her. But we are currently looking for a new executive director. And Jeff Braven will be the head of that process. So look for more information coming in January and upcoming months after that, and additional dialogue in regards to that. Hopefully, we will be able to hire that individual at the same time that I switch the reins over to Jeff as the president of CEASD. It is possible that we may develop 2 different roles, government relations and executive director, as 2 separate roles, or it may still be all encompassed under the executive director role. So we're still looking at opportunities there, and it is a wonderful opportunity for our organization, but hats off to Barbara and all the work she's done. So before moving further, I want to make sure there are no questions. The next agenda item is the Cogswell-Macy Act, and at this time I'd like to ask Barbara to share the updates on where that legislation is.
Give me one moment and I'll share my screen. So I'd like to start off with a big thank you to Dr. Giesland and Jeff Braven and our board, and to all of you who are here for our executive members. There are so many people that I've been able to meet throughout the years, and it has been a pleasure to work with all of you. And I really appreciate all that you are doing for deaf and hard of hearing children and families. This has really been a huge decision to resign from CEASD. And there are so many other things that I would like to do. Traveling, camping, biking. I'd like to do more of that. So I'd like to take advantage of this opportunity for this next phase in my life. Some people call it retirement. I'm calling it phase 3. So there are a lot of new adventures ahead that I'm excited for. And I want to thank all of you for your partnership and for all that you do and for all of the kind messages that I've received. So the Cogswell-Macy Act, we have been working on this for quite some time now. And every year it has a little bit more structure. So just to review and give you an idea for deaf and blind children and students.
And deaf and blind.
But this will just briefly show you what is required. For states to develop a plan describing how deaf and hard of hearing deaf-blind students around the state, how they have a responsibility to them and how we can provide for our students. It hasn't been clearly outlined. So this will require them to explain their responsibility to these students. It will also require states to gather further data. We already know that more data, more information is needed for our students, and the State Department of Education needs to collect that data as well to look at this population of students. And for disabled students, even though they're looking at all disabled students, our population is a bit different, and the State Department of Education should be accountable for that. The bill will also require the U.S. Department of Education to be directly involved in monitoring these outcomes, and the Department of Education for the state to be able to identify where our students are and what the results are for this population. So it will require a lot more state accountability as well as from the U.S. Department of Education. Over the years, this conference started in January. There were 49 sponsors in the House and 4 in the Senate. The Senate was very slow moving because we wanted the bill to have partisan support or bipartisan support. In the House, both Democratic and Republican parties were in support, mostly Democrats, and we were able to get more Democratic support. The lead sponsor in Senate, Capito from West Virginia, she wanted both Republican and Democratic support for this bill. So it has been easier to get that Democratic support, but we really had to work with some of those legislators to get the Republican support as well. We were hopeful, but we've not yet gotten that. So we have 4 so far, 2 from each party, but we will continue to work and set up meetings and to reach out to other contacts. One of the interesting results from this bill, though, is how our lead office in the House, Representative Cartwright, has really become interested in deaf education and is starting to take an ASL class and working on her PhD, and is really investing in their next phase as far as deaf education as well. So you never know what kind of results you will have from the efforts that you make. So there are a lot of organizations that are now supporting there at a national level organizations that are in support of this bill. There have been monthly meetings with deaf and deafblind groups to discuss how to further our agenda, and not just for this bill, but for other ideas that we would like to share. There have also been letters and meetings that have been sent to and established with the Department of Education and Congress. And just recently, there was a meeting with the acting secretary for OSERS to discuss some of our issues and to focus more on deaf and deafblind students. And to talk with some of those policy leaders for since 1992, the department has had some discussions. We've had discussions with them. This past summer, there was a Twitter blast to get support for the Caldwell-Macy Act, and that led to the Education Deaf Summit, and many have been involved in the summit in the past. Before, there was 2 days in person in DC, which was really nice for everyone to get together. There was a lot of energy and it was very fun. Last summer it was online and that was enjoyable. Again, this year it will be online and it will be a 4-day event. So part of this summit is that we have a visit to Capitol Hill to visit with Congress for the day for a briefing, and to have that briefing with the members of Congress to share our speaking points and to hear from them. And that will be helpful for them to be able to understand. So during that week, we'll be setting up an appointment, or you can set up an appointment yourself to meet with your Congress members. Once you have registered and you have information, you can set up that meeting. And then you can share, they will share instructions if you've not yet experienced this. You might be a bit nervous, but don't be. So what you'll do is you'll register and I can help with that. But what is important is for you to meet with your Congress members so that we are visible. Also, on that first day, we'll have a youth workshop for NAD that Gallaudet is setting up with several different activities and events with high school students from our schools that will be able to join on that day to also speak with our members of Congress, talk about planning, training, and if they're able to participate in those meetings, that will be a great experience to develop their advocacy skills. On Wednesday, there will be an administrators workshop. The Clare Center has sponsored this. There are always good speakers and activities. The content is very strong and worthwhile. On that Thursday, there will be a meeting set up before. That was called Pill Day, and it'll be about 15 minutes to a half an hour where you can schedule time with your Congress members for that day. There's also a Gallaudet visit day where high school students who are curious about Gallaudet can participate. So there will be several different events with several organizations involved. CEASD, obviously, the government departments, the Welcome Center at Gallaudet, the Clare Center. So all 4 of these organizations have been working on this for the last 5 to 6 years. And we're really hoping that you will be able to register. I don't know if you saw the message that was sent out yesterday, and I'll be sending it out again several times. It is free. It is a good experience, and we hope that you'll be able to register to join us for this event. Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments?
Okay, it looks like everyone's pretty quiet up to this point. All of your information was very clear. Thank you.
Sure, if anyone has any questions or comments, you know where to find me, just reach out.
Thank you, Barbara, for sharing. Now I will talk about the current strategic plan, which started in 2018 and runs through 2021. We are making good progress. I'm very proud of CEASD's board for the diligent work they have put into this and the cooperation we've had. Clarion has been a consultant and has consulted with other organizations on their strategic plans, and they worked with us as well to identify opportunities and threats and areas of strength and weakness so that we were really able to get a comprehensive analysis of our organization and look at areas that we need to focus on in the strategic plan. So there were 5 areas. The first area was leadership, academic leadership, and building capacity. We have gathered leaders, and of course with COVID, we had to adjust things a bit. However, the concept of moving forward and building capacity has been ongoing and is continued. And Jeff has really spearheaded that. Thank you, Jeff. The next area is accreditation. And we have accomplished much with accreditation and things that we need to do to reflect today's current standards and needs for our schools, such as diversity. And when new practices come into play, we have instilled those in our accreditation process. So Claire has led that group. The next area was our marketing and branding, because we want people to know about Schools for the Deaf and deaf programs. So CEASD has worked with revising our logo, improving our website, and making sure that there is a clear vision and mission so that people know our brand and everyone will remember who we are to make sure that deaf children thrive. So our mission does support all schools and the leadership within that. So building the capacity to make sure that our children can continue to thrive. And that was led by Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. The next area, D, was looking at current collaborations and assessing whether or not those collaborations that we currently have, that we're getting a proper return on our investment with that collaboration. Again, emphasizing the need for our children to thrive and doing so through collaborations. We've developed rubrics and partnerships and looked at how we can continue to grow in this area and looked at really scoring those so that we were able to assess and reach out where we need to, but make sure those are worthwhile collaborations. And that was led by Stacy. So thank you so much, Stacy. The last area, last but not least, has been a focus on all of our strategic planning and positioning. And so prioritizing those and to make sure that we are inputting critical pieces in all areas of the strategic plan, such as diversity. And that was led by Shauna. So I'm very thankful to her as well. Overall, this has really given our organization focus. Board meetings in the past have always happened twice a year. And then we've had our conference. And it's really not given us enough time. So we've really wanted to focus on that, make sure that we're able to cover all these areas so that our students continue to grow. So we've added additional meetings. We've added those online meetings in January and July, in addition to our conference and our fall meeting as well. And that has really helped us continue to keep up that momentum with our strategic plan. Not only that, but when we meet as a board and we go through our agenda, it's important for us to focus on the tasks. As we log those meeting minutes, it allows us to keep track of those and assign those projects and put those into our action plan and keep that updated. Then when we complete those meetings, we regather as a board, we make sure that we refer back to the strategic plan and where our action items were, so that we can remain diligent in making sure that we accomplish all the things that we are trying to. And that idea really came from Stacy, and she's just done, as our secretary, has done an amazing job At this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Jeff Braven so that he can share our new strategic plan moving forward for the next few years.
Thank you, David. It's hard to believe that our strategic plan through all of COVID and that it's already almost passed. So we want to make sure it's like a roadmap for us, looking at each of those areas that David mentioned. And it's been a pleasure working with this board. This is a great group of leaders. And like David mentioned, he's done a great job of guiding this group. As the next president, we would like to also have a clear roadmap for the next several years to continue the work that has already been done and to continue to support each of our leaders and schools. And that ultimately leads to supporting our students and helping them to thrive in their home and school environments. So there's a preliminary discussion for the next strategic planning session. So far, some of you might not be aware, but on Thursday of each month, the next one will be in January, February, and March. That first Thursday, we will be meeting and we will have breakout groups to discuss different topics to then develop goals and objectives that will guide us before that CEASD conference, where we will finalize that strategic plan after we've had an opportunity to look it over and revise and then share it with the board. So with these new chair people, with these new groups, helping each of them to be able to work together to continue to make progress and to find a way to continue to support all of our schools. So far, we have 7 topics that we would like to focus on in different areas. The first one being outreach. Let me pull this up. I don't know if Claire or if one of you would like to summarize your group's discussion. Claire, if you wouldn't mind just summarizing what your group has discussed thus far.
Sure. Well, our group really began by studying and analyzing the different models of outreach in each of the schools. We talked about how there was a lot of variety within that. Some schools are legally authorized to do outreach. Other schools are not. Most schools talked about lack of resources and support for outreach. And we talked a lot about how to elevate and identify the view of our school and an outreach center, and the value of our understanding of deaf children and instructing deaf children. Luann may want to add something.
Yeah, our last discussion about outreach, we felt like we really needed to focus more on early intervention from birth to 3, and how some states have a variety of relationships between their programs. Some don't have a 0 to 3 program at all, and that's statewide, whereas other schools, they're accountable for that birth to 3 and doing their own outreach, and they're more heavily focused on outreach than other schools, and they are able to provide resources and professional development for parents around the state. So like you mentioned, all the states are very different. So it's nice to have an understanding And it would be nice to have it to be more standardized and to have the same rules between schools. And to be able to see if they are able to merge to have a single goal, right, Jeff?
Yes, this is Jeff. Oh, I said 7. Outreach and early intervention really are all a part of 1. So really it should be 6.
So thank you for sharing. The second category is diversity.
John Serrano.
John,
Serrano, excuse me.
I don't know if one of you would like to speak for your group. Okay, I see John is here. We might be missing them. I'll go ahead and move on to the next group. The next group is language deprivation. Amy, Novotny, and Stacy and Chris. I don't know if one of you would like to comment.
Yes, hello, sure. I'd be glad to talk about that. Our group has had a lot of discussion about how to prevent language deprivation and then also to put those supports in place once we see that that has already happened. So those were our 2 main focus areas. We haven't really nailed down a lot of details yet, but we really want to focus on diagnosis, needs of data, and then more research, getting that out there, and then a more standard description of what language deprivation is, using that common language so that we all have the same understanding of what language deprivation is and what it means. At current times, it's a very different understanding by other people. So then also supporting those teachers and making sure they have resources, and then supporting those that aren't familiar with working with kids that have language deprivation. So it's a pretty broad category, and we are trying to narrow it down a bit more. Jeff?
Thank you. Now, if we can, we'll go back to diversity. I think John is back. Would you like to share what your group discussed as far as the strategic plan? Just a brief summary.
Sure, yes. We had a really good brainstorming session, and we talked a lot about the impact of diversity and how current that theme is, and sharing resources. There are a lot of schools that are doing similar things, but we're really not to the point of sharing our resources. So looking at everything is so separated at this point. So we think it would be great to share resources as well as really invest in recruitment strategies so that we can recruit diverse staff members and get them on staff and retain them as well. So we don't want to see an exclusion of diverse members of staff. So there's been a lot of discussion about that as well.
Great. And talking about our strategic plan as it relates to diversity, not having those separate silos, but making sure that we have that overarching support for each of those groups and not having them so separate. So taking a look at that discussion and how it will affect our process. Thank you so much to you and your group for working on that. The next group
I think that's Shauna. I think it's
and
Shauna
that's
Nancy.
Shauna, I'm not sure if you're here. Great. Thank you, Shauna. Maybe you could share what your group has discussed.
Sure, good morning. Yes, I'd be more than glad to give you a quick update. Our group has discussed the challenges in regards to LRE. And really, it's more about how the LRE is interpreted differently between the federal level and the state level, and then even at the local level and the school level. There are so many different interpretations of what least restrictive environment means. So we've had a lot of discussion about that. And also looking at the indicators, which is really impactful when we're talking with the right people about the indicators, and making sure that it really truly that trickles down everywhere, and how that interpretation impacts everything, and how we can get to a unified understanding of what that means. And then it all ties back to money, which is has a huge impact on how we address things. So we've identified challenges, and so now we are at the point where we are looking at how we can address those and what CEASD can do. So looking at talking to the right people, of course, and making sure the right people are on the bus, if you know that phrase. So you've got to talk to the right people. And that's been a lot of our discussion up to this point. But we've just begun.
Scratching the surface, right? So moving on to another topic, talking about a staffing shortage. We know that around the country that all of our deaf schools are struggling to find staff, and how we can support each other's schools. David, and maybe you can, Michelle, maybe you can share.
Michelle, please feel free to chime in whenever, okay? So basically, we have identified specific areas, and the first area is how to retain current teachers, and then how to recruit more teachers. Some of these areas do require a national level effort. Other areas require a state level effort. So for example, the pipeline from universities to our schools. So looking at that in the accreditation piece, do you have a connection, a collaboration with the universities? So ways that we can really infuse this into all aspects of our schools. So that's just one example. Another example, at the state level, obviously each state handles things differently, and CEASD works with all of them. However, instead of us adapting to everything, instead providing a toolkit of talking points that you can use at your state level. So for example, if people are struggling to pass the praxis, then looking at those teachers for the deaf state standards and what are needed, and looking at altering those. Is there too heavy of an emphasis on the speech portion or the audiological portion of the praxis? So where we can focus our efforts to make sure that staff are passing the praxis. At the national level, we have to create partnerships, obviously, with the Department of Education at the federal level, and making sure that we are addressing not only the spoken English component, but the ASL component as well. I'm going to keep that short, but Michelle, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, I think you covered it mostly, but if I could add one thing, bringing down some of those barriers as far as advocacy and education, and being able to make sure that there's adequate access, and then also being able, helping our teachers to be able to do their best. I know that so many
Sell our schools better.
sell our schools better to be able to show some of the things that we're doing well and not just where we're struggling.
This is Jeff. Absolutely. Marketing is key. Thank you both.
So our sixth and final group is data. And this group is not part of the other meetings. They have a separate meeting, and they will meet one more time here in February to discuss how we can collect the data and have a centralized data hub where everything can be shared for different purposes to be able to invest in our schools and help them to be successful. And so that's an ongoing effort. So with each of these 6 groups, they all have wonderful goals in place, and they're all working hard and ambitious in developing this strategy to help our schools to adapt to the current climate. It's like a living document. So they'll be meeting again in April, and then sharing that with our board members to keep CEASD working to support our schools and to help our children to thrive. I'll turn it over to David now.
Great. Well, the CEASD conference, I know Jeff mentioned it. So actually, can you talk a bit more about that, Jeff?
Okay, on to another topic, the CEASD conference. It's going to be in Salt Lake City, Utah, hosted by the Utah School for the Deaf, and it will be led by Michelle Tanner. The theme of this conference is
Creativity and innovation.
creativity and innovation. So it sounds like a very exciting conference, and we encourage all of you to be there to join in those discussions and to participate. I know with COVID-19, all of us have been on Zoom, and we're ready to be back in person, shaking hands and giving hugs and talking in person and catching up, because that's something that we all really need. I know that some are concerned about the Omicron variant, but we're hopeful that we'll all be able to be there in person. As we get closer to the conference date, if we find that there's additional information that needs to be shared, we will be sure to do that. Also sharing information about vaccination requirements to make sure that everyone is able to enjoy a safe space. It's not yet been decided whether masks will be required or not. That will depend on what the state guidance is when we get closer to that time. The presenters so far that have sent in submissions have been incredible. And we extended the deadline, so there's still some time for submissions. So please go ahead and do that if you're interested. Over the holiday break, we will develop a draft schedule and then share that in January. Honestly, really, as part of our strategic planning, the conference is one of those components, and it's so important to help our leadership to be able to benefit and then to take back those ideas and that creativity and that innovation to build up our schools.
Jeff, I just had a real quick comment. And currently in Utah, there are no mask requirements for conferences. So I just wanted to give you that update.
Okay, apparently Utah's very liberal. Well, we will.
Yes, you have access to wherever you would like to go.
Hopefully things will stay the same and that Utah will continue to be safe. Great.
Right, we'll see.
So I'd like to encourage all of you to go ahead and get registered. Registration is open online on the website on the, well, CEASD2022.org. You can register there. It has all of the information as well as our wonderful sponsorship you'll be able to see. So I encourage you to register. When the program is finalized, we will also be posting it on the website. The program for the conference, we're utilizing new technology. There will be an app that has all of the program information. So we're moving on into the new age. For any of you who might be a little bit wary, it's okay. Welcome to
We'll teach you.
We'll Teach You. There are also going to be a silent auction with so start saving your money now so that you'll be ready by March. You can take some of your Christmas money and save it to support CEASD and to support other students at the same time. So go ahead and start saving up your money. We look forward to seeing all of you there in person in Salt Lake City and being able to be together in person. catching up as well as learning together.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much, Jeff, for sharing the information about the CEASD conference. I absolutely cannot wait. At this point, I'd like to open the floor for questions. The floor is open to all of you. Well, it looks like we must have covered everything. And as always, my door is open. Feel free to contact me via text, email, etc. I am here for you and your students. Stay safe and get your booster shot. Not just phase 1 and 2, but get your booster shot so you can talk about how super vaccinated you are. We'll have a great conference. Yes, happy holidays,
everyone.
Absolutely. Happy holidays. Yes, everybody get on screen. Let's see your faces. Everybody turn on your video. Yeah. Happy holidays, everyone. See you next year.